What's going on, everybody? Before we get into today's show, a little update on our race to 3,000 subscribers here with our Heat Report channel. We're losing, and we are in kind of a ditch right now. So if you guys haven't subscribed yet, go down there, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit 3,000 subs by the end of tomorrow. So if you guys haven't subscribed yet, help us out here at the Bulls Report and subscribe today. What's going on, guys? My name is Patrick Seatman, and we got a loaded show for you guys today. We're going to be talking about a report that came out around the Zach LaVine trade rumors at first. I'll be giving my thoughts on that. Then we're going to be breaking down 5 available free agents that I do think would help the Bulls contribute to winning next year at a pretty high level. And then I'll also be breaking down the Jevon Carter signing from yesterday, kind of giving my thoughts on the whole thing and how I really think it helps the Bulls, especially on the defensive side of the floor. But we start this off with the Zach LaVine trade rumors, as Joe Cowley from NBC Sports Chicago dropped this at the beginning of free agency yesterday. He said, "Source just told me the Bulls continue taking calls on Zach LaVine, not making them, and asking price remains astronomical. Little has changed since the February trade deadline. Knicks have long pivoted off the guard. Could this be a game of chicken by AK?" And about that Knicks point, we did hear the kind of beef between CAA and Clutch Sports. Obviously, LaVine is represented by Clutch Sports, and Leon Rose is the head of CAA. And LaVine's camp came out and said they don't want anything to do with CAA. So it kind of the Knicks kind of maybe pivoted off this. You know, they're not going to want to give up a ton of assets for a guy that his camp doesn't want him there. But my overall take with LaVine is I doubt he gets traded. I think the Bulls have made this very clear. They are trying to run this back, and they are trying to win basketball games next season. Whether you agree with it or not, whether you think the Bulls should have pivoted to a rebuild, or whether you think that the Bulls, maybe you agree with them. Maybe you do think they should have pushed all their chips to the center of the table and go all in on winning this year. This is actually what Bulls president of basketball operations, AK, had to say about the LaVine trade rumors. He says, "As always, we are not going to comment on rumors, but we all were disappointed with the way the season ended. And Zach was one of those guys who was very disappointed. He went into the offseason to get better and already is working with our player development in Los Angeles and started his work early. He's trying to get better." He carried on to say, "I think a lot of our guys are working hard and trying to get better and get ready for the season. I do not follow or read the rumors. I am focused on what our group thinks and how we can improve this team." And I will say, AK just won't admit, no matter how bad it gets, that this doesn't work. And that's my one kind of beef with this whole thing, is that, like, let's just say the Bulls do run this back. And let's just say we're at that February trade deadline this next season. And what if the Bulls are like 5 or 6 games below 500? I don't have faith that he would kind of admit he was wrong and rip that Band-Aid off and be self-aware and say, we need to reset, we need to pivot the direction of the franchise. I just don't think he has that self-awareness. Like, clearly this big three of Vooch, DeMar, and LaVine doesn't work. But he is doubling down on those moves, doubling down on that trade for Vooch that we made 3 trade deadlines ago. And he really wants to go all in on winning games this year. Yeah, I mean, you kind of saw it yesterday with the Jevon Carter signing, with the Vooch extension, with the Andre Drummond opting back in. The Bulls really think they can win some games next year. I just disagree, and it seems like LaVine will most likely stay in Chicago unless somebody throws the Bulls insane trade package where they really can't say no. But now, second topic on today's show, we're going to be diving into 5 free agents that are still available that I actually do think that can help the Bulls win a lot of games next season. Obviously, the Chicago Bulls, like I said, they are trying to win games next year, and I do think there are still some quality names that the Bulls could use, especially with that mid-level exception that they still have in their back pocket. The number one name for me, Grant Williams. He is a restricted free agent. I'll make that point very clear with the Boston Celtics, so this could potentially even be a sign-and trade. But with the Celtics, with the Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum contracts, and then obviously with Porzingis getting that extension yesterday, I don't expect them to retain Grant Williams. But Grant Williams, he's a heck of a role player. I mean, this past year, he's a sniper from downtown. He shot nearly 40% from deep, and you can see just kind of his archetype in that photo on screen right now. He's a big dude. He adds a sense of strength to a lineup no matter where you play him at the 2, 3, 4, or 5. And I think he fits exactly what the Bulls need. I think the Bulls need to get bigger and get more of a sense of physicality, especially at that front court position. Grant Williams fits that perfectly. Like Grant Williams in terms of shooting and just adding just big size and strength to that front court, I think that's exactly what the Bulls need. And right now with the Jevon Carter signing, I think this is what the starting lineup would be for the Bulls next season. Jevon Carter running the 1, LaVine and DeRozan at the 2 and the 3, Patrick Williams at the 4, and then Vooch at the 5. But then if you would add a guy like Grant Williams coming off the bench, then maybe you could get creative with some lineups of a Kobe White, Alex Caruso. If you do bring back Io, and then you finally have a true kind of 3-4 stretch hybrid and Grant Williams off the bench, I think it would be a perfect fit. I've been a fan of Grant Williams' game, and also I respected when he got face-to-face with Jimmy Butler in the 2023 NBA playoffs. Didn't really back down, even though he ended up getting clowned by Jimmy and ended up getting taken to school. I still respected it. But I'll ask you guys, who do you want the Bulls to sign next? I think my number one name was the number one guy we talked about. I think it would be Grant Williams, but I'll ask you guys, who do you guys want the Bulls to sign next during free agency? Number 2 on this list is Paul Reed, actually DePaul kid out of Chicago. So Paul Reed's the second name on this list. And again, this is kind of the 5 names I put together here. They're all big. They're all long. They just kind of add a sort of defensive intensity that I think the Bulls need. But last year with the 76ers, again, the stat sheet is not going to blow you away. He had very limited minutes and a very limited role with the 76ers, but we've kind of started to see him come to his own in the NBA. I think we're finally starting to see him take that step and that development needed on the defensive side of the floor. Like, he is truly one of those guys where you feel comfortable with him switching onto your point guard, but all the way up to your power forward. Like, he can switch 1 through 4, a very versatile defender, and he's long and he's active and he gets after it defensively. And again, having that type of player off the bench, I think could be huge for the Bulls, just especially that defensive side of the floor. We've seen kind of the resurgence of defense in this last year's playoff, and I think Paul Reed would help that a lot. Number 3 on my list, again, another big wing for the Bulls, P.J. Washington. He's a big dude from the Charlotte Hornets. I'm a big fan of his game, and I think we've seen, him take another step. Like, a lot of these guys on this list, like, we've seen them coming off some of their best years, and I expect him to get paid. But again, he's another big, versatile defender, and he is coming off a scoring year where he was fantastic. I mean, averaging just under 16 points a game and just under 35% from deep with his size. I'm a big fan of him, and I will say he is a restricted free agent, but Charlotte, I don't anticipate him to bring him back, but we'll see. Obviously, that's still up in the air with his decision there in Charlotte, but again, the Bulls need to add strength, and he does check that box. Like, these big physical defenders, like, we've seen what the Denver Nuggets did this past postseason. Them running the lineup of Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic all at that 3, 4, and 5 spot. Like, if you can't match their size and match their strength too, you're going to have a tough time beating them in a 7-game series. And even if you look in the East, like, the Bucks are always a big physical team, whether they bring back Lopez or not. Philly is a big physical team. Even Boston with the Tatum, Brown, and now them with Porzingis. Like, size has always killed in the NBA, and that's where the Bulls, they really need to check that box with their mid-level exception that they could use on one of these guys. But speaking about another guy coming off his best year of his career, Kelly Oubre. And this would be, if it's not Grant Williams, I think I'd go Kelly Oubre out of this list. I've always been a fan of his game, kind of that 3-and-D archetype, and just a solid role player in the league. But he went off this past season with a big-time role with the Charlotte Hornets. We've seen his usage rate increase this past year. Obviously, LaMelo Ball dealing with injuries. He really got most of the touches there in Charlotte, but he put up 20 a game. Obviously, the efficiency isn't where you would like it to be. He's a volume shooter. By no means is he going to probably shoot 37% from deep, but he is a big-time scorer. And let's just say LaVine or DeRozan would have to miss a game. Like, Oubre could legitimately be a third scoring option or a tertiary scoring option on a championship team. Like, I really do believe that. He's a guy you can throw him the ball in the park and say, get out the way, go make a move, go make an ISO bucket, and he does that. And he's also got really good size, again, for the defensive side of the floor. Like, defensively in the NBA, it's funny. Like, you need size, and you also need heart. And I think Oubre kind of checks both those boxes as well. But he averaged 20 a game last year. He's a consistent 15-a-game guy throughout his NBA career. I'd love him on the Bulls. And number 5 on this list, we've seen him connected to the Bulls kind of this whole offseason. There's been reports from Bamba's camp that he wants to play in Chicago, and I thought this would have been a little more likely if Andre Drummond didn't opt into his contract. But with Drummond opting in, I do think this is a little less likely. But Mo Bamba, I mean, he would be fantastic coming off the bench as a big for any NBA team. And I would like kind of yin and the yang that him and Vooch would have together, because obviously Vooch is more of an offensive big. He doesn't really move his feet too well, moving side to side laterally. He's a little slower than other centers in the NBA. But if you would bring in Mo Bamba, kind of be that rim protector off the bench, I think that'd be a big-time get-up. And he had a very solid 2021-2022 season where he averaged just under 11 points a game, 8 rebounds, and damn near 2 blocks a game. But I will say this. I would give those minutes to Adama Sanogo. Like, if you're going to bring in another big, let Sanogo cook down there. Obviously, Sanogo is not the rim protector that Mo Bamba is, but we've seen Sanogo this past year at the national championship, or at the highest stage, winning the national championship at UConn. He was fantastic. So if we had to choose as a third big for the Bulls, I would probably lean towards Adama Sanogo getting those minutes rather than bringing in a guy like Mo Bamba. But if Mo Bamba wants to come here on the vet min deal, by all means, I would love to have his defensive presence, because especially if you could the Bulls could run out a lineup of a Caruso, Carter, Ayo, Patrick Williams, Mo Bamba, that might be the best defensive lineup in the league. But now, with the Bulls signing Jevon Carter yesterday, I've kind of sat on this, hopped in the lab a little bit last night and watched a lot of his tape, and I'm excited about him. I think this is one of the more underrated moves in free agency. They obviously signed him for a 3-year, $20 million deal, and some people think it's a little too much, but I think that's the going price for a strong defensive guard in the modern-day NBA, and the Bulls got their starting point guard. We've really seen him take this jump this past year with the Bucks. Obviously, his role increased. He is 27 years old, so he is entering his prime. We saw him average 8 points a game last year, 2.4 assists, and really solid efficiency. And the one game that he started for the Bucks last year, he had 32, 12, and 5. Like, when his usage rate goes up, we see his production go up. And I think that's a huge tell sign of if a player can kind of take that next step. But my whole breakdown and my take on this Jevon Carter signing is I really do believe the Bulls will have one of the best defensive backcourts in the league with Caruso, Carter, and Ayo. Obviously, we do have to bring Ayo DeSumo back. But if that were to happen and the Bulls would be able to run those three on the court at the same time, I think it would be fantastic. I know you might be saying, oh, they're too small. They might not be able to match up with some of the threes on the other team's team. I disagree. I think with Caruso and Ayo being the long defenders and athletes they are, I actually think they would be able to match up with any team's three, and they would just be able to cause havoc. And the number one concern with the Bulls is rim protection. How do you kind of complement a lack of rim protection? You have great on-ball pressure, and that's what Jevon Carter does. And final point here with the whole Jevon Carter signing, I'm not saying he's a Lonzo Ball replacement, and I don't know if he'll ever live up to that Lonzo Ball kind of hype that he had around him and that impact and that productivity. But Jevon Carter could do that. Jevon Carter, with the ball pressure he would bring next to an Alex Caruso, I think it would just help the Bulls' defense as a whole so much. And maybe we won't really get to see the defensive limitations from a guy like Vooch. Then you also add in a long defensive wing like Patrick Williams at 6'7", who can play that 4 and 3 spot. I think Bulls defensively next season could be one of the sneakier, better defensive teams in the league. And I'll tell you what, any given regular season game, if you got to go against Caruso, Jevon Carter, or Ayo, it's gonna be a nightmare for the other team's opposing guards. But guys, grade the signing of Jevon Carter down in the comments section. Give me an A, B, C, D, or F. I'm sitting at an A right now. I love Jevon Carter, and plus, he's from Chicago, played at West Virginia, Press Virginia, grew up in the city. Now he's playing for his hometown team. I'm a big fan of him, but I'll ask you, grade the signing of Jevon Carter down in the comments. See you guys next time. Go Bulls.